Here we are. Ta-da!
Once again.
Across the nation from each other. Bill, how are you?
I am well. I am here in just south of the Los Angeles area in beautiful Orange County. I have a different location today because I'm doing some recording later on in the studio down here. I'll give him a little plug if that's okay. My
Sure.
good friend Brian Pothier has Pothier Productions in Brea, California. It's an incredible studio. And I guess my life runs a lot like my good friend Devon here, where there's not a lot of downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I was on the road for about 2 hours to get down here in LA traffic. Was just on a phone call with our good friend Jim Delacroce, who says to say
Yes.
hello. He's a brilliant
Aw,
PR guy, management guy. Uh,
in
Walking,
Nashville.
yeah, exactly. And then so I went from that 12 minutes ago to walking in here, doing the podcast with you. When we're
Mm-hmm.
done with this, I'm going to walk about 40 feet down the hall and start a session with a new artist that I'm producing. And I'll tell you more about that some other time. So um, I know that the only person who runs around faster than I do is Devon O'Day. Every time I talk to her, she's doing something different. And I think that feeds rather nicely into today's discussion.
Distractions.
Exactly.
Nothing gets in the way of a dream faster than a distraction. And sometimes it's so easy to use those distractions as an excuse. And it can be something easy, like a distraction. Television is a distraction. I mean, especially since our televisions now are a phone.
Yeah.
If we get involved in binge watching or something and we get something, and it can, I'm preaching to my own choir on that one, because I can get so involved in something that I forget to do something or make myself late.
Yeah.
Distractions to a dream. Or it could be something really serious like a health crisis within a family.
Yes. And I think um, this all turns into a very interesting discussion because I believe it's all matters of degrees. There's a lot of
Mhm.
gray area in everything we're about to talk about. Um, can you be distracted for a couple of minutes from an enjoyment standpoint? Television, radio. Oh, there's my favorite song. I'm going to listen to it before I get out of the car. That's kind of on the positive side. Um, do I grieve when I lose somebody or something? Yes, but is your grief going to outweigh the rest of your life where you can't get out of the rut? No, that's where you have to step in. And that's, I think, where you and I are talking about today. This is tough stuff that we talk about. This is not easy. This is not, here's a magic potion and this all goes away. Distraction, we can talk ourselves into it, and sometimes we can talk ourselves out of it if we use a little brain
Wow.
work.
True. And sometimes the distractions pop up because we really are afraid of pursuing that dream. And sometimes, have you ever heard of someone who is so, they're not afraid of failure? And everybody always, oh, well, you don't want to try this new thing because you're afraid of failing. No, there are a lot of people who don't try what they want to try because they're afraid of the success.
Exactly.
More so,
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, because success means you're going to have to make changes in your life. You might lose people because if you become successful and they're not as successful, there's all those things that play into it. And subconsciously, those are factors. Uh, Out in the open, you would never admit, well, I'm afraid of success.
Yeah, I think one of the really misunderstood um, points of that is that fear of success means that you're good enough. And a lot of people, when you say at the root of the matter, they don't think they're good enough. There is a very, very common scenario called the imposter syndrome, which,
Mhm.
for those of you, I guess I should remind our audience, in addition to being a musician and being a podcast co-host with Devon O'Day, I'm also a certified consulting hypnotist, is the term.
Mhm.
And I have clients. This rarely happens to, or let me put it another way. This often happens to people who are successful in everybody else's eyes but theirs. The
Hmm.
imposter syndrome is, I'm the CEO of a company. I make a lot of money. I have a beautiful house. I have a big car. I hope my employees don't find out who I really am because I'm just a knucklehead, from Detroit, and I don't really know what I'm doing. It happens. But,
Hmm.
people, it is a distraction. It is in the way, and it
Wow.
doesn't stop them from making money necessarily, but it does stop them from being a success. It does stop them from living their dream. They're not living their dream if they think they're an imposter.
It's an interesting thing. This remains nameless. This is so long ago, but I worked with someone who was a dismal failure on the air as a radio personality,
Mhm.
but he kept failing up.
Yeah.
He kept failing up. And what I mean by that, they kept promoting him out of the on air position, which is usually, that unbeknownst to most people, that usually is a lower paid position. The on air position is usually lower. And then, but he kept failing up. So they'd move him into the sales uh, department. And then they move him into the sales manager. And then they move him up to the general manager or the program director. It just
Mhm.
kept going up, 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 up. And pretty soon he's the boss of everybody over a conglomerate of radio stations. But he still remembers the guy who failed on the air.
Yeah.
And that's how he treated people. Anybody who did what he wanted to tell everybody how to do their shows, he wanted it. And but it was all from that remembering of, I'm a failure at this. What if they find out?
Yeah, and that's again, the reason we bring up these topics is that the name of our show is Dreamcasters, and how do you get around that?
Mhm.
How do
Right.
you follow your dream? How do you realize your dream? And it's
Hi,
not
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, my goodness. Um, it, if you start basing your dream on how much money you're going to make or how fancy a car you're going to drive, you're already on the wrong side of the dream. I think those are the people that find out too soon that that's empty because yeah, I did get the nice car. Now what?
Right.
Um, I will have to say, I know part of our job here, Devon, is for us to kind of bring our personal life into this because that's why we're here,
Mhm.
right? We're not just
Mhm.
moderators. I've never felt any of that. I don't know if that's because I'm so cocky. I don't know if that's because I'm so lucky. I'd like to think it's because I'm enlightened. I have never felt like an imposter. I've never felt like a failure, but I've never felt like I should stop trying to make myself better.
Mhm.
And if you ask me what my favorite thing to do is right now, this is one of my favorite things. I couldn't wait to get here.
Mm.
I do cherish the moment, and that is part of your dream, right? Because if you are looking forward to your kids coming home from school so you can give them a hug and make them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's an amazing day.
Yeah. Oh, so well put. So well put. Elizabeth said that's a powerful feeling, not being sure we are good enough to be where we are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Elizabeth, I think the overall overarching statement would be you are good enough, no matter who you are and where you are,
Mhm.
right? You need to tell yourself that you're good enough. And some of this sounds a little trite, and some of
Mhm.
it sounds like, again, don't ever want to sound like a Hallmark card, but
Or the
you're
guy
good
from
enough.
Saturday Night Live that, I'm
Yeah,
good enough. I am smart enough. You know,
exactly.
but you know what? Those little affirmations get you through a wealth of things.
Hmm.
It really is the truth. And a lot of what you're talking about, and I do want to take this moment to mention that your book, for people that don't know, the Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician, is out on Amazon. You can get it at billcinque.com, and you can also get it in the audio version, which has a lot of added features. And a lot of what you're talking uh, about dreams, you realized one of them, and it's a poignant place. And I want you to take us back to this kid from Yonkers, New York, who was leaving his hotel room to go play Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Um, it was in 2017, and I'm a native New Yorker. I was actually born in New York City, and I got the chance to tour the world a couple of times with the great Neil Diamond, who is, in my mind, one of the greatest singer-songwriters. And I think the overall picture is not so much about music. The overall picture is I was never a church-going person. I don't necessarily read the Bible. I try to live a good life, and I do have a spiritual path. But I was never what anyone would call a religious type. So here we are, getting ready to go out to play Madison Square Garden in the hotel room at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And, you're throwing a couple of things in a bag. Okay, running out the door because I got to get in the shuttle downstairs. It's going to take me to the greatest stage in the world where I spent my whole life hoping I could play. I got to the front door of got to the door of my hotel room, opened it up, and I stopped. And I can't really explain the entire feeling because it's hard to put into words. I turned around, I went back to the foot of my bed, and I knelt down like I used to do when I was a little kid. And I thanked God. And when I say I can't always describe the feeling, I just knew it was something that needed to be said out loud.
Wow.
And it changed my life because I went, talk about a dream. I mean, this is a dream on top of a dream, right? This is playing with Neil Diamond. You could stop right there. Playing at Madison Square Garden for 30 seconds in any situation. That would be great. To spend 2.5 hours on stage with the greatest singer-songwriter at the greatest, the cathedral of concerts in Madison Square Garden as a New Yorker, and then say, oh, by the way, you're going to do it again on Thursday night. We did it twice in 1 week. I think I was overwhelmed, humbled. I had gratitude, grace, humility, and at the same time, pride in the good way, not one of the 7 sins, but I was so proud to be there. And you had this kind of confluence, I guess, of emotions. And I remember just saying, I knew exactly what I had to do. And what I had to do was say thank you to God and the universe. I believe I called you the next day.
You did.
We didn't have a podcast. We didn't have any. I called Devon the next day. I said, I can tell you about the show some other time. You could probably see it on YouTube. I could tell you about the songs. I could show you the set list. That's not what I want to talk to you about. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell that story again, because it really was mind-blowing and soul-blowing. Is there a word?
Yeah, I'm telling you, it was powerful. And the reason that I wanted to bring that up, because you and I met, I think I was 18 years old and you might have been 20 years old. And we met and we sat on a rooftop of where my sister lived in New York. I hadn't moved to New York yet. And we talked about dreams and we talked about those things. And I have watched us, my brother, as we have continued on this path. And not to say that we have not had incredible losses and incredible things that have happened, but not letting the distraction keep you from it. And one of the distractions for a lot of people is age. And I hear this all the time. I am too old for that to ever happen. I'm too old for that to ever happen. How old were you when you walked on the stage at Madison Square Garden?
I was 59 years old. I got the biggest gig of my life when I was 56. I got the biggest gig of my life at 56 years old. I had just said to my girlfriend at the time, the couple of weeks before that, I was doing a great tour with the British Invasion show, which was those of you that might be a little older, people like Jerry and the Pacemakers and the Searchers and Billy J. Kramer and these people from the 60s. I got home from that and was saying, obviously that might have been my last hurrah. The day I got home was the day I got a call from Neil Diamond's office. And I've told this story many, many times. But the idea is I didn't shut myself down to the dream. I kept myself open. The logical part of me said, well, I'm 56. This is I'm getting a little long in the tooth for.
That's the distraction. That's the
Yeah,
thing that's
it
over
sure
here.
was. It sure was. But it all worked out, and it's still working out. I mean, I'm coming into a dream this week. And again, I don't mean to make this all about me. I'm hoping that what the audience takes away from this is at 65 years old, you can keep having dreams and you can keep realizing dreams.
Right. And because you retire from one thing, and I'm not speaking about us because I don't think you and I will ever retire because what we do is so much fun. But we do what we chose to do because we loved that, and that's what we chose to do. But retirement for some people, you can retire from one thing into another. You can keep on going. And I just interviewed a very sweet woman who retired into her I always call it her next life and her next life and her next life. She had a career as an airline attendant. And now she spends part of her dream is taking care of her grandkids and doing things with them. And then another part of her dream is anytime someone calls for her to volunteer, she says, I'm free to volunteer. So she works for the Cancer Association, and she works for the breast cancer group, and she works for Tunnels to Towers. And Terry Allen, if you're listening, you are such an inspiration. She says, get up off the couch and go, people. Get up off the couch and go. And she precedes us in age because she's already retired from one of her careers. But you always have that plan of what's my next chapter. We're a book. We're not just one chapter. We're not one trick ponies. And I want to encourage people that if you have some dreams, don't let any of those distractions stop you. Now, you can have distractions. You can have moments where you go, I got to press pause, but you can always keep that dream in the back burner. Sizzle, I always say that the peas could stay on the back and simmer low.
Yeah.
Elizabeth says, absolutely. I've worked hard to get where I am, but those tugs sure can sneak in.
Well, this, is it Terry Allen that you were talking about? Just from what you say, I would donate to anything that she's doing, because it's just from what you tell me, she sounds like someone I would like to know. She also sounds like somebody, if she's ever selling that couch, it's probably in pretty good shape, because obviously she doesn't sit on the couch at all. So buying a used couch from Terry Allen might be
exactly. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? Now I want to open up the thing where you have something physically that has happened to you. And this one's going to be about me, because you and I sat there on that rooftop when we were just kids, and you actually told me you were going to play Madison Square Garden. I don't know if you remember that, but you said you were going to, because you were playing music at that time. You looked like Gino Vanelli, and you were, I totally bought it. I said, she's going to be there. And I said, yeah. And I'm going to be in radio at a major radio station. And that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'm going to be an afternoon drive personality. Those jobs were not available to females. So in my 50s, I got my dream of afternoon drive at WSM. You got your dream of being on stage with Neil Diamond at Madison Square Garden. That's the age distraction. So we've got that out of the way. You just keep, as long as you keep going, you can do the dream. But then there are those physical things, and you go, how do I get past it? I studied voiceover in New York from one of the premier voices. He was the voice of MTV, Tonight on MTV, not one of the VJs. It's the premier voice. I always say the plum jobs were always the network announcers, coming up on ABC, coming up on Bravo, coming up. And that's still one of my dreams. I want to be the voice of a network, because women don't get those jobs usually. So that's still one of those dreams. But Don Cobiella was my teacher. And he taught me more about making a living with my voice than any other human being on the planet. Just so, so good. And Don had a stroke that made him unable to use his face the way he did. and he had to teach himself how to speak again by holding his face a certain way. And he got it back, and he got in touch with me years later. And he said, if you ever have any voiceover work I can do, I'm moving to North Carolina my family's moving out of New York. We're moving there because it's better for my kids. And he says, but if you can ever throw any work my way or help me. And here was my mentor asking me for help. And I thought, and he still burned with the dream. So I called everybody I know. And I don't know if anything ever came of any of that, but to be able to repay a service to a mentor is a huge part of it. And there was that gratitude moment for me. I went, thank you, God, for the dream that you gave me. Thank you for the ability. Thank you for the teachers you brought. And God bless him as he continues, because he truly is one of the best voices ever. So that's just another thing. When physical things, teaching yourself how to walk again, teaching yourself how to speak again. You think about Johnny Erickson Tata, who I just did her last narrated one of her books. She was an Olympic swimmer, basically. I mean, she was training and she was a great swimmer, and she had an accident and fell into an empty pool, and her spine was damaged, and she taught herself how to paint with her mouth and has spent her life speaking to groups and things. And I go, physical limitations can be huge distractions, and they can do a lot to say, stop your dream. Or you can fuel it with those deep, hard canyons.
Yeah, when they when you hear those kind of stories,
Mm-hmm.
what the rest of us have to take away from it is not a sense of pity.
Right.
I think that's also where we go wrong. You have to look at this as, this is nothing but pure inspiration. This is nothing but pure drive on the part of that other person. And it's not trying to shame you or embarrass you into doing something. The idea is, you should be able to look at that and say, this means that I can take another step up. I can get another step closer to my dream. It's not about saying, oh my God, I'm sitting here on the couch and I'm terrible. That kind of self-doubt, that does not work. Depression, I assure you, is not a motivating factor. You need to be inspired. And when I see people like that, I just look at that and say, well, that I would hire that person to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I would hire that person. I would buy that painting. That person is capable of doing what most people never thought could happen. And surrounding yourself with people like that is what you need.
Right. And I always look at, okay, life is kind of like that tube of toothpaste. It doesn't come out of the tube without pressure, without squeezing it in the direction, because that toothpaste is perfectly happy in that tube, never to come out, never to serve its purpose, whatever. Some of us live our lives in the safety of the tube. We're perfectly good toothpaste, whatever. And we don't ever want the pressure that makes us become what we're supposed to become. But sometimes those pressures in life force us into the situation of our becoming.
Yeah, well, isn't that the caterpillar and the butterfly, right?
Yeah.
You where are you going with this? Where are you going with your life? Where are you going with your dream? And again, going back to what we said earlier, it's not based on money. It's not based on how big a house you have. What it is, whatever it is that makes you happy, I would start there. And I see a lot of people who don't start there. And as simple as that sounds, when you ask people if they're happy or what makes them happy, you get a lot of funny responses. If you ask somebody how tall you are, there's an answer. If you ask somebody how much you pay in rent, there's a dollar figure. And yet when you ask them what makes you happy, it gets convoluted for some people because they don't know. And part of that is because they're in the fog because of a lot of the distractions that we're talking about, because they don't have anything that makes them happy per se. They have something that they think would make them happy, but they're not going to go there, right? Again, they're not going to go there because I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that, I don't have enough money, I don't have the time. And that's kind of the essence of this podcast, is to remind people, no, you can make the time, you can pull it together.
Finding the place in your life for what makes you happy and knowing what that is. I want to encourage you to create the happy list. Create the happy list. Actually put on paper the things, because when I was in New York, I had a list in a notebook of the things that I wanted to do with my life. And I found it when I was moving a few years ago. I found the old notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's like one of those kind of things I hadn't opened, whatever. And because I had written it down, I had not looked at it in 30 years. But everything but two things I had achieved in my life. And the things that I didn't achieve ended up being, I achieved them, but in a different way.
Yeah.
In other words, I didn't have a marriage and I didn't have kids, but I did have some very nice relationships along the way. And that's the way I'll say that. And I got to take care of somebody else's kids a lot.
Sure.
And so I thought, well, you know what, that I kind of got to experience those things. So in essence, I had achieved those. I said, man, I was talking to an artist friend. I said, I need a new bucket. And he says, why you need a new bucket? I said, because I've done all the things on my bucket list. So I need a new bucket and I need to fill it back up. So whatever you're doing today, make your list, physically putting it on a list of things that make you happy, not just stuff to do, but things that make you happy. Very simple, and then gratitude when you're in the dream. A lot of times we pass over the fact that, oh, wait a minute. Because I will tell you on that list, I didn't stop every time and say thank you to that dream for it happening, because it happened.
Yeah. Well, I know I talk a lot, maybe too much sometimes, but I'd like to take just a minute anytime we do this podcast and remind the audience some of the accomplishments of my good friend Devon O'Day, because we've known each other a long time and I've watched some of these bucket list items. And being an author, being an animal rights advocate, being a public speaker, being a hit songwriter, and hit songwriter meaning George Strait #1 song hit writer,
Thank you.
being not only one of the biggest personalities in Nashville radio, but I say this so often, I have traveled the country and the world as a musician. If I run into anybody in the country market, and I mean anybody, and I've met the really big people and the crew, and I've met the bass player and the sax player, I mentioned Devon O'Day's name and I got myself lunch. They sit down, they want to talk to me about Devon. I'm in, I got a backstage pass. Everybody loves Devon, including this morning, talking to our good friend, Jim Delacroce, who among other things is the manager for the Lovin' Spoonful. And he said, say hello. So when you're talking about dreams on this podcast, this is not us being self-congratulatory and patting each other on the back. This is for the audience to know that when you have somebody who is excited about getting on the radio, and then you figure, well, that's okay, Devon's doing that, but she would walk out of the radio station and go do MC at a benefit, and then wake up early the next day to tape a show early so that she could go work on her book. I mean, these are the kind of things that I want a lot of people to look at and realize we're not just sitting here talking from a script. We are talking, if there's any script, it's the script of our lives, right? We're talking from experience. These are memories. This is not imagination. This is stuff we've lived through.
And it's simple stuff that puts us into the next thing. I mean, dreams, we can put it off in the woo-woo category of, dreams and stars and all that stuff. But no, it's practical every day. Your dreams are dressed in overalls and work gloves, and you show up every day and you do what you're supposed to do. And somehow magically delicious, those dreams sort of start to happen. And then you're in it. You go, wait a minute. When I wasn't looking, the dream happened.
Yeah.
And But see, Elizabeth shares, sometimes we don't really know what will make us truly happy. I'm finding things in the second half of my life that I never imagined bringing me joy. Elizabeth, you are a poster child for all the good things that you do, and Elizabeth finds joy in such simple, wonderful things. And her whole persona is about, she finds such joy in helping people. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. Let's see, Lisa, Devon does it all. What a huge heart. Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate that. Yeah, it is inspirational. Elizabeth says, when you start making your life about being of service, it changes everything. I said, the salesperson who wants to hit their sales goals, if you stop trying to sell and you start trying to be a service to other people, if what I sell can serve other people and make their lives better, all of a sudden what you do has a different meaning.
Sure.
Sure. My dad sold insurance, and was he working for a commission? Yeah. But I said, but Daddy, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Because he was a teacher first. And he says, I do this because, remember when Miss So-and-so's husband died? She and her kids thought they were going to lose their house and they were going to have to move and everything was going to change. And he says, and I walked in and I said, no, your husband bought this policy. Your house is paid off. You have no expenses and your life can go on just as you match. And it was just like, he said, that's why I do what I do. Yeah. And that's the thing. If we can take whatever we're doing, put it into the service category, all of a sudden it changes. Even being a musician, right, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had moments where I remember one in particular. I was playing, there's an old Loggins of Messina song, great song called Danny's Song. And it was a big hit for a couple of people.
Even though we ain't got money.
That's the one. Yeah, Anne Murray, actually. Yeah. Also. I played the song 1,000 times, and this is 25 years ago, I guess, and a guy is sitting with his cell phone holding it up. And I could tell that there was just something different. His son, Danny, was in Iraq in the war. So it's now a different song. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing that I sang 1,000 times. It's not the same thing you heard on the radio. Mm-hmm. How could you put a price on that? How could you put a dollar amount on that? When you talk about being of service, I didn't know that. I didn't go there to do that. That was, I guess, an incredible byproduct of that situation. And I'm sure that the entire package surrounding that was the fact that, the one thing I do right in my life, I can't cook, I can't clean, I'm no good with a wrench, I can't fix a car. If you put me in front of a microphone with a guitar, I'm going for it. I don't care if it's Madison Square Garden or the backyard party, I'm going for it. I was always going for it. And I would like to think that that passion translated to this guy whose son was in literally a war zone. And somewhere in there, I'm thinking, well, this touched him and that was over the phone and 8,000 miles away. I guess it had to start with how I was communicating with that audience that made that guy say, wow, this is touching me. Let me get this, let me get this through. So we don't always know. We don't know. It's not like you get up in the morning and you have an objective to go sing into a cell phone. No, that was the farthest thing from my mind. I couldn't have ever imagined that, but that's the way it goes. And if you keep yourself open to it and you're following your dream and you have the passion, your dream sometimes makes a lot of other dreams come true.
Mm. That's brilliant. Oh, in Elizabeth, energy transfers. It does. Oh, that's brilliant. That's just brilliant. Well, you guys, we have come to the end of a broadcast day. Just if you want to get in touch with Bill, Cinque.com. That's the website for Bill. And I'm going to add these other two as well, because you do hypnotherapy, and sometimes we let those distractions become roadblocks and we can't get over them. And Bill has an amazing way and meets you virtually where you are. And it's non-invasive. And it's wonderful to watch you. That's another dream that you weren't planning on. You did not mention that to me on that rooftop in New York City so
No,
many
that
years
was
ago.
I hadn't even thought of it.
Yeah. So there are dreams that we haven't even dreamed yet that come to us. Oprah Winfrey says, God always has a bigger dream for us than we have for ourselves. I love it. And Lisa adds, yes, we never know how our actions might touch another life. And thank you both for this new Dreamcaster show. It started beautifully and will grow each week.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Well, follow, subscribe, and share, everybody. And if you have a topic that you want to talk, we're going to open something up next week. And just another topic. We're here on Tuesdays in the noon hour. But Bill, thank you for your time. I know that you're going to go play some beautiful guitar.
I'm going to give it a shot.
Well, until next time, everybody, have a good one and dream on.
Thank you.